Welcome to Applied Intelligence, a conversation at the intersection of people, technology, and getting stuff done. And now, here's your host, Imtiaz Ahmed.
Now that was perfect timing if we could ever plan that. Jim, thank you again so much. Appreciate it. All right, guys, we got a big topic ahead, don't we?
Yes.
From the master of e-commerce himself. Now we're diving into how consumer demands and their expectations are really changing. So Nuno, I'll start off with you. How has the shift towards e-commerce and omnichannel strategies actually impacted brand positioning for companies, and even in your experience, brand positioning for your company, and customer engagement? How, at this point, are you balancing the offline and online engagement?
Great question. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me today. Zip Country Canada is basically the mattress firm. Think of us that way. So basically a mattress and bedding company. We operate 2 omnichannel businesses and 6 DTC businesses. But for us, quite frankly, it was business saving. Up until December of 2019, our website was purely a showroom. Actually, it wasn't transactional at all. Lucky has it that by March, that was fixed. And so once the pandemic kicked in, particularly in Canada, where Toronto was shut down and most of the country for 2 years, without a DC business, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today. From a brand perspective, however, we really like to think of ourselves as a sleep brand in Canada that's helping Canadians awaken to the power of sleep. So what digital really brought to us was the ability to really fulfill that promise in a much more ongoing, truthful, and honest way. Because now I have the ability to mimic in the online world everything that used to be primarily in store. So the relationship with the associate, with the expert, that allowed you to walk away from the store feeling that you had your sleep problem resolved through a solution of one of our products, now is actually in the online world. So that notion of being much more present has been instrumental to digital and social, which before was, again, a very physical experience for us. And so that has really helped us strengthen the notion of awakening Canadians to power of sleep much more than before. And on your notion of the balance between the two, frankly, we try not to balance in the sense that, of course, we keep a very obvious baseline plan based on learnings and historical learnings, but we let the customers dictate where we go, quite frankly. We try not to dictate where and how they engage and shop with us. Our job is to listen very attentively, pay attention to what they're saying, taking that feedback, converse with them, and actually deliver back to them the solution that they need the most, be it through our Dreamline associates online, be it through virtual, be it through physical source. Our job is to deliver the best experience for them, no matter where they are.
And Imtiaz, what's your perspective here, and how has brand positioning at Reckitt evolved in this landscape as well?
Sure. So Reckitt is a global CPG. We've got 3 distinct verticals we operate in. One is household cleaning, the second one being healthcare, and the last one being nutrition, which is baby formula. I'm part of the baby formula business. When we think about e-com and omnichannel retail, different parts of our business have very different digital maturity as well as e-com penetration. There are brands and categories where we have like less than 1% e-com penetration till to this day, and there are other categories where we have over 25% brand penetration when it comes to online retail. So the way in which we look at the strategy has to be nuanced per market and per retailer, given the complexity that the retailer actually has, as well as how important that e-com channel is to specifically acquisition. So in baby formula, you're spending anything between $400 to $1,200 in lifetime value in about 6 months' time. And then you don't really want to be part of the category anymore, simply because it's so expensive. So from a tailored e-commerce strategy, what we're really thinking about is how do we win that first purchase online, which is typically where a lot of that purchase is happening, as well as winning it in offline. Because a lot of trial is actually happening in offline, and that extended lifetime value is happening through the online channels. So we have to have a cohesive e-commerce strategy that pairs the offline data back to the online so that we can extend that lifetime value. In the US, the birth rate isn't really growing that fast, and the rate of breastfeeding is actually increasing. So there's no volume growth in this category at all. All of the growth that we're going to see is going to come from either trading people up into more expensive products or stealing market share or getting that one incremental purchase in that lifetime value. So the way we're thinking about this is through e-commerce, through the data that we get from our retailers, as well as our D2C site, how do we influence that purchase so that we can win?
I want this to be interactive as well. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask, please raise your hand and we'll get a mic over to you immediately. So that way you can engage with Imtiaz and Nuno in real time. We don't have to wait till the end of the session. We talked a little bit about AI and leveraging AI. So Imtiaz, how is Reckitt actually employing AI strategies and data-driven strategies?
Sure. So one of the most exciting parts of retail media for me is looking and executing retail media with data clean rooms. So within our baby formula business, we do a lot of sampling across the US. We sample to over 2 million households in the US. And to be registered into that program, you actually have to give us your first-party data. So we get over 3.6 million registrations to our CRM program on an annual basis. As the retailers have enabled data clean rooms for us, where we've been able to match our first-party data with retailer first-party data, we've started to make really micro audiences in order to activate our media. Essentially, there's approximately 10,000 babies being born in the US every day, and then there's 10,000 babies leaving the category every day. So we have to be very targeted when it comes to acquisition, because every day we acquire is a customer that we have today and will have for the next 6 months. If we don't acquire every single day, we lose market share. And then while we have them, we need to extend them as much as possible. So by using a data clean room with a couple of our retailers, what we've really been able to do is get to these very small niche audiences and market to them aggressively during that period of time. And then once they've left the category, we've actually exited from advertising to them as extensively. Now, all of this learning we kind of did through our D2C, which we've been on a D2C journey for over 10 plus years now. And through data clean rooms, we've now actually had the ability to replicate that at a privacy compliant manner. So in D2C, we learned one-to-one marketing. How do you get to that hyper personalization at a one-to-one scale? Through data clean rooms, you can effectively get to 1 to 2,000 level targeting. When you're a multi-billion-dollar brand, 1 to 2,000 is effectively the same thing as 1 to 1. So by leveraging AI, we can actually manage the volume of work that this is actually causing in terms of managing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of micro audiences on a daily basis when it comes to activating that retail media.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and thank you so much for sharing that. Nuno, what about you at Sleep Country? Are you trying to employ the same kind of strategies? What are you exploring?
We're in a very different category. By the way, with 3 kids, I was definitely one of those in the baby formula market for quite a while. No, we're a very different category. I mean, what we use AI for, and generally the way I think of AI for our teams is truly another brain, another head that thinks way faster than we can without that hard component that gives the humanity that we need to talk to people. So we use AI in 5 different ways at the organization today. In marketing specifically, we utilize a lot for insights and data, obviously. So the ability to comb through troves of data a lot faster than we used to in the past. And then really weaving it out the nuggets that we need to influence a strategy, communication plan, so on and so forth. We also use it a lot for pricing and merchandising prioritization, evidently as a way to understand how consumers are reacting to the introduction of a new product, as well as how we change our lineup. We also utilize today a lot more for creative production. In our case, when I'm obviously shooting a lot of mattresses look very similar. So my ability to swap up backgrounds and be able to test creative a lot more than we used in the past it's much more robust. But again, I think it's just the ability to give you more data while yet needing the human to drive behind it. But in our category, similar to yours is, if I do miss you though on a purchase point, in that point of purchase, likely I won't see you for another 7 or 8 years.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, unless you're buying an accessory. So in Canada, for instance, to some data points, anyone in Canada will buy an accessory that means a pillow or any bedding within 12 to 18 months. That's about half the country. 68% buys it after 18 to 24 months, and it goes up from there. Mattresses will fluctuate between 6 and 12 years. Some actually companies like Tempur will give you a mattress that can last you 20 years. So if I don't engage with you early enough, you're just not going to be my target at the end of the day. And of course, what has happened to our category in particular is And hence why we've made so many acquisitions, such as Casper in Canada. We own it, exactly because think of Casper for us as a Nike to a Foot Locker. Is engaging with an audience that, quite frankly, would cost me a lot more marketing dollars to engage with, because they perceive the Sleep Country mothership brand as perhaps a more traditional brick and mortar versus the coolness factor of that. And so what AI is doing for us in that regard is understanding the varying audiences in the background and trying to obviously give consumer data privacy regulations in place, try to cross-pollinate as much as possible the learnings to be able to more effectively target our audiences.
Yeah, just to kind of stay on that, for mid-size and even niche retailers, when you're competing with larger e-commerce like platforms, of course, this can be really challenging. So how can companies leverage their unique strengths like customer loyalty and even personalized offers and specialized products to stay competitive?
I mean, look, in our case, for instance, one of our biggest competitors is Amazon. Good luck. There's no way I'm going to outbuy Amazon, right? It's just not going to happen. Or Wayfair. You're just not going to outspend them. It's impossible. In Canada, we are the giant retailer in that space. So it doesn't apply to the same logic. But in our case, quite frankly, is relevancy. I think if you look at the way the platforms operate today, be it Meta, be it Google, we used to try to hack as marketers how we would engage with you in a journey. Since the advent of AI, I can't really do that anymore because the platform is going to react to your behavior. So we focus on really creating communications that are relevant, be it through paid content, organic content, or pure play advertising. Relevancy is the biggest thing that my team is focused on. At the end of the day, the much more creative I have in market, with more relevant points of communications to your life, the greater are my chances to hook you into the funnel and keep you into the funnel and drag you down the funnel.
I think another way of looking at this, especially if you're a small to medium retailer, is really differentiating yourself through service. One brilliant case study I've seen is the Tractor Supply Company and how they do customer service in terms of, and they use AI to enable people within their stores, their store managers, to even call you up if there's a specific issue in relation to your order and make sure that you've got everything that you need. So I think if you can really differentiate yourself through really thinking about that customer journey and activating where you're really important in that customer's pain point, you continue to build brand loyalty.
Yeah, I've heard that as well, that leveraging AI to actually empower your humans to provide better customer service can be a game changer. Staying with that, how can companies and organizations actually change how they approach the customer experience, especially as we're heading into evolving customer demands, really, and trying to reach customers where they're consuming their information and where they're getting their reach and their media.
Yeah, happy to jump in. I mean, one thing we're going to touch on your question before, just to build on Emta's point, is there's also brand, right? I think in retail, often enough, we forget about the role of brand. And there's this line that I grew up with in my career, which is build brand over time, make sales overnight. And the more you have a brand that stands out in the crowd, the more you're going to be able to deliver against that. But back to your question. I mean, frankly, you just touched on it. It's listening to consumers. What AI is allowing us to do right now, again, is to be able to pay attention to consumer communications and conversations much more attentively than we used to in the past, and a lot faster. And so if you're really creating a always-on communication feedback loop with the consumer and understanding how they're reacting to you in the marketplace, you're going to get ahead of the market. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. And AI can superpower that, where in the past, if you think about all the great social listening tools of 10 years ago versus where they are today, where you used to get that email with a bunch of data, they go, yeah, but I can't do anything with it because it's just an insight. Now they've evolved so much that they really move at the speed of culture. And you're able to leverage those insights and in real time change your communication strategy and be more effective with how you spend your dollars.
AI is just magic for that process. It just allows you to do these things much faster, but you still need to come up with that magic with humans.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true. Any questions from our audience? I'm happy to get that mic over to you. Tyler, we've got someone right up front. Thanks for getting us started. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sean McCarthy, Camping World. Getting the AI magic to happen, though, doesn't happen on dirty data. So was your data already clean and ready for it? Or was most of your investment and effort spent actually on that side of life? And what did that look like from a getting business buy-in? It's not a sexy thing.
Great question. The principle of rubbish in, rubbish out always applies, right? But I think to really have a true transformation, you need to think about three things: people, process, and platform. Do we have the right talent to do the change transformation that we're wanting to do? Do we have the right processes in place to actually make these changes? And do we have the right platforms or partners to enable this stuff to actually happen? If you don't have things set up properly, you're going to need to spend the time to do all of that stuff. Get your house in order before you can implement something crazy like a new platform. But educating your C-level executive suite or educating those key stakeholders in terms of organizing this stuff so you can actually do it is probably where I would start, rather than just picking a new vendor or picking a new technology and saying this is going to be the catch-all and end-all and the solution to all of our problems.
Yeah, great question and answer. Pretty similar. In our case, Sleep Country has been around for 30 years this year, with over 300 stores in Canada, which sounds small, but in Canada, that's a lot compared to the US. We had stores that were still operating ASP 400. I kid you not. So there's a lot of data sitting there, but accessing that data was quite difficult. So we spent the last 2 years in a giant transformation project. I actually rode from the airport with someone from the Home Depot who's here, Brian, who leads transformation over there too, and talking exactly about this, the number of years it takes you just to clean that data, to have access to that data, especially marketing, to have a CDP, which we do now, hallelujah, to actually tap the information. But then to your point is, you also have to have the right people operating that. Operating a CDP is way more complex than most folks that haven't done it understand it, and no way, shape, or form I'm an expert on it, to be clear. But once you do have the right folks and the right platforms partner with you, then the magic really starts to kick in. And we, fortunately enough, 1 year into the job, I'm just lucky that I got there at the right time, where the data is starting to come to life. But it would still take 12 to 18 months for me to have an actual customer lifetime value, for instance. It would take me another 18 months to get there. But it's evolving. It's evolving a lot. And then to your point is, it is a lot of just having very transparent, constant conversations. Because if the organization used to be in a very brick and mortar analog universe, which we were, it's just that much more difficult to actually break through, right? And you feel like you've had the same conversations 1,000 times. Guess what? You're going to have the same conversation 1,000 times. But eventually it does break through, and then once the payoff starts to show up, people will obviously understand the investments and will stand behind you.
I think it's always dangerous when an executive buys a piece of technology that they don't know how to operate.
Yep.
It's like
That doesn't happen ever, right?
It's like buying a Ferrari F1 team and not having a race crew to actually service that thing, not having like a Lewis Hamilton to drive it and a coach to actually lead the team. You need to have the right people and the team to actually run these things.
And this is worse than ever now, I find, with AI. Like worse than ever.
Yes.
The amount of and again, every company was once an Amazon, meaning they're in the garage just starting it up. But the amount of companies that will reach out to you and say, 800% returns on investment, like how is that even humanly possible? And so carving through that is really challenging, to your point. And I feel that most CEOs globally, especially North America, went through a 12-month period of being highly pressured by the boards to deliver on an AI solution of sorts. That, to your point, doesn't necessarily make sense for the organization, but it answered the pressure that the board had on delivering on some sort of AI solution that the company supposedly needed. So making sure that you actually need it, it's definitely crucial.
We had a question.
Helen of Troy. Can you speak more about the platforms that you guys have been working with?
Sure. So I manage retail media for the nutrition business unit. So primarily, I'm working with the likes of Amazon Ads, Walmart, Kroger, Instacart, and the sorts. So that's from like a retail media activation point of view. In terms of data clean rooms and stuff, we mainly work off an Azure data lake and then pipe our CDP data through Epsilon directly into the multiple data clean rooms that we activate.
On the marketing and media side, the usual suspects, obviously the Facebooks and Metas, Google, and so on and so forth. On the data side, we operate our CDP with Simon. And Simon has been a huge part of this conversation, and BigCommerce is our big e-com partner as well. And then there's a slew of other platforms that we work with on other technologies across the organization.
We've got another question in the back.
Yeah, hello. I'm Thomas McKenna from Ocular Technologies. Two questions, if I can. First one, what are the Gen AI use cases from an e-commerce perspective you're actually most excited about? Where, you know, if you could have them yesterday, take over a certain role in the business, that would be perfect. And then the other, on retail media in particular, what are the insights you're not getting from retailers that, again, if you had a magic wand in terms of performance or reach, they'd actually be giving back to you?
Sure. So Gen AI use cases. A part of my role is, one is buying the media on the retail media platforms, and secondly is actually creating the media as well. So we have a full in-house production team that does all of the creative that goes onto our product pages, as well as our DSP and video ad buys. So one of the Gen AI use cases we had was pumping all of the historical content through a Gen AI model, and then tagging it with all the tags that the humans who created the content didn't do. So what's the marketing claim inside of the image? What's the size and spec? What's the call to action inside of that image or video, etc. So we have all of these new tags to tens of thousands of assets. Because these assets are mapped to creative IDs, which sit within campaign IDs, then we got impressions, clicks, and sales mapped to all of those assets. So for the first time, we were able to see sales per marketing claim, which we never had before. So we then fed all of this data into a Gen AI model to firstly give us creative insights to see, what is effective versus what's not effective from a performance point of view. And then this then led to us creating more DSP assets from that as a base. So now, instead of us just creating new campaigns from scratch, we're using this as a data source, as a base for us to create new assets based on what's actually worked before, rather than going to a DALL-E and just typing in, give me an asset on blah, 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 or just changing a background on a PDP image. Your second question was, sorry, I missed it. Yep. Sure. It's really the basics. And when I say basics, it's things like search volume data. So how many times is my brand being searched on a retail media platform? How many times is the category keyword being searched on that category platform? How do I then segment audiences based off that keyword data that I can activate on DSP or on email through the retail channel, et cetera? So, it's great to have the click volume and click share, but we need much deeper insights. I come from a D2C background where you could have anything you want. But that simply doesn't exist, and it can't, because there's privacy concerns, there's retailer data confidentiality agreements, et cetera. But as close to D2C as we can get is what the ideal is, but we need to have those privacy controls and those confidentiality controls in place. This is where I think data clean rooms are super interesting to enable that compliance to the privacy regulations.
Any more questions? Oh.
Hi, Rohit Nichani from Encora. Have you had, or let me try to rephrase this, how mature or immature has your FinOps been? Have you all seen an increase in spend by not monitoring your usage of your data cloud providers or other public cloud providers? And has there been conversations potentially of a cloud exit, bringing it back hybrid, and so on?
From a cloud, okay, so if it was an issue, somebody would call me and tell me it was an issue. But fortunately, so far, we haven't really run into those kind of issues as far as I'm aware. Yeah, that's all I can say to that.
So to me, yeah.
Oh, we have another hand up over there. Let's see. Natalie's gonna get that mic over to you, sir. There we go. You're on.
Hi, this is Liang. I'm from Raxo in Canada. The question I think for both of the panelists is, so when you apply AI to your business, you probably have multiple or many different areas you can apply. How do you prioritize which one you apply first? Is it strategic driven, or is it driven by some kind of ROI or some kind of directions set by executives?
Great question.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Good question. Whatever my CEO tells me. No, I'm just joking. No. In my area, specifically in marketing, brand, and technology side of the marketing team, quite frankly, is everything that allows me to, one, make sure that my team is mostly focused on strategy and not execution. So every time I bring AI, for instance, from an insights perspective, is so that someone isn't spending 2 weeks combing through data to find a nugget that I can do in hours or a day at most. Sometimes with depending technology, a little longer than that. But also I can reduce all of my non-working dollars expenditure. So for instance, with your example, for us as well, the amount of production that we do or used to do without AI was extremely high, and the non-working dollars kept growing year over year. So my primary job was how do I cut that down by bringing AI in to obviously optimize a lot of the production, especially when I'm not utilizing humans, because that's where I think AI still lags a little bit, and obviously where I'm not running into any risks, which I think still is a problem with AI with intellectual property. I think the biggest deal with AI today in creative production is protect intellectual property, which quite frankly, a few companies, perhaps Getty with DALL-E, a few companies have solved it, but not primarily. But again, in my case, really is how do I reduce my team's times in effort, in execution, more in strategy, and how do I reduce my overhead and costs around non-working dollars that are not related to media, and therefore that won't get me to more customers and selling more products. And then ultimately, obviously, from a customer experience perspective, to your point, Mtaz, is just the NPS score. The more AI that I can inject, for instance, even in the basic call center, to ensure that the transcripts are being read way faster and delivered insights way faster so I can activate a solution, as well as the delivery experience that I have with our delivery folks. It allows me to continue to tailor that experience further, working alongside with CX and sales. And that will ultimately show itself off at NPS scores and better brand health tracking measurements.
One of the great things that I've had is an experimentation team, a team that just manages all of our experiments. And as part of that, we have like an experiment card for each one of these initiatives that we're running, and it's got a value attached to the experiment. So from a week-on-week, month-on-month basis, we're prioritizing and looking at where are we going to put our experimentation resources based on the business value that we can deliver. That could be, potential revenue upside. It could be cost savings. It could be customer experience upside. It could be differentiation. Whatever we're measuring, it comes back to the experimentation team to make that call. And then as a wider operations team, we get involved where we need to help them prioritize what we do.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Thank you both so far. So I just wanted to expand on, Jared Fantasia, Johnson & Johnson. As you've improved the non-working dollars, one of the things I have responsibility for is understanding my internal team's culture, right, in the organization. Mm-hmm. Have you gotten feedback, or do you have a mechanism how you're gathering feedback that they're seeing the benefit? They're seeing that we're doing less non-value-added work, and therefore I could do my job at a higher level and offer more than what I was doing very manually before. Are you getting the feedback, and how are you measuring that feedback?
Great question. We are. So that's something that we run with my team, my directors. We will run that on a monthly basis. So at Sleep Country, we have a company-wide assessment survey that runs every September. But before that, my team runs every month. And not only within our team, from a cross-collaboration perspective, what have been the improvements that the process or technologies that we brought to the table have caused. And we look at it actually from a cross-collaboration perspective more than within our own teams. Because in marketing, in retail, especially in what I'm doing, if I'm trying, for instance, to invent a new goods with purchase, if I don't get to the merchandising team within 9 months, it just won't happen. Right? Or if I want to push for a new product that's becoming a success in the market, if I don't talk to them within 12 months, that won't happen. So what we do is run this monthly workshops to ensure that those processes and technologies that we've implemented are resulting in faster, better, more accurate work. And just like you do, if they're not checking the boxes, then we'll look at the process or the technology or ultimately the people, because it ended up being one of the three. We start with process and technology first, people last.
I would say use just zero-based budgeting every year to really see if you really need all of the tools that you have. Okay. And then secondly is run productivity initiatives on top to see what you can squeeze out if you don't need it anymore.
Oh, you guys are really watching that clock, aren't you? Got 20 seconds left on it, and they're keeping their answers tight. Thank you guys so much for being interactive. This is exactly what this is about. Any opportunity that you get, please engage with each other, ask each other questions to get the most out of the next 2 days. We're about to take a quick coffee break before we send you to our roundtables, but a big round of applause for our panelists. Please make sure you get their contact information, connect with them on LinkedIn, and say hello.